This is going to be interesting. Greetings, my name is Nina. Welcome back to my channel. This video is dedicated to our dearest classic literature fans. Well, first of all, let's start by saying that classic literature is very good. These are really solid novels with solid ideas that stand the test of time. And now let me address certain things to classic literature fans. And simply casual viewers, you are welcome too. Let's go with it. First of all books that today are called classics were once newly written. Yes, they did not exist throughout history. They were in the process of making, and then they were released. And they had a release date, and they were considered new at the time. They weren't always classics. Next, most classic books were underappreciated when they first came out. So these books, they did not receive the status of a classic right away. Those books, they needed time. Next is that classics is said to be classics because they capture human condition. Wonderful. Do you know what are the books they capture human conditions perfectly? The books that do not have the label of classics. Yes, said books that they do not have the label of classics attached to them. They also capture human condition perfectly, and sometimes even better. Next, that is that books outside classics also have a beautiful language. They also have a really beautiful prose, and that classics does have really complex, really interesting writing, but so do other books. And also keep in mind, I just remembered that some classic books, like for example David Copperfield by Charles Dickens, they have a lot of words in the text, because back in those days, writers were paid per word or per page. The more, the better the pay. Next thing I want to tell you, dear classic literature fans, is that modern literature is good. Modern literature is amazing. Moreover, some of those books are going to become classics in the future. They say that The Book Thief by Markus Zusak is going to be a future classic. Next thing I want to tell you is that only certain classic literature books tend to be appreciated, recognized, but some tend to be ignored. Well, for example, I think Beneath the Wheel by Hermann Hesse should be talked about more often, well, because it deals with a really relevant thing. It deals with how studying pressures kids, how it affects them, and how to deal with it, and what happens when studies take over. This should be addressed, really important issue. And I also think Poor Lisa by Nikolai Karamzin should be appreciated more. Yeah, a lot of books, they have the classic labels, but some classics might be better than others. Why are people so selective? I don't understand. Yeah, because of this, I really do not understand why people think that classic literature is inherently better than modern literature. Next thing that needs to be said is that for the most part people select books that speak to them. It doesn't matter if it's classics, if it's something modern, no matter horror, thriller, fantasy, you name it. People select books that speak to them, people select books that intrigue them. People select books that are interesting to them, and criticizing and shaming them will not get them into classics. And even if people pick up classics, it's going to be out of shame, not out of genuine interest, and it's not going to last. Next shocking thing I'm going to reveal to classic literature fans is that classics is not a singular genre. Classics is a combination of various different genres. Some of the books from said genres, they become classics. So yeah, classics isn't something singular, it's something plural. And finally, the last thing, the last message for classic literature fans that I guess this is going to shock them, and it's related to the previous point. Here, come closer.
Fantasy is classics.
The horror! The horror! Yes, this might have been a revelation to you, but like I said, classics is a combination of genres, including fantasy. Lord of the Rings is fantasy classics. Same with Chronicles of Narnia and The Last Unicorn. All of these are the examples of classic fantasy. When you tell people that they should not read fantasy and they should pick up classics, keep in mind that they might pick up Lord of the Rings, because Lord of the Rings is classics and also fantasy. There's children's classics like Alice in Wonderland and Peter Pan. There are sci-fi classics like Dune, horror classics, well, some Stephen King novels might be, detective classics like some Agatha Christie novels like And Then There Were None, such a solid book, and fantasy. I understand that I might have shocked you. This is a really tough pill to swallow. Yeah, given all these reasons, I really do not understand why some people who read the classics, they not only condemn modern literature and fantasy, but also think that classics is the only literature that should be read. This is absolutely not true. I do understand that modern literature and fantasy and nearly every genre in existence, they has its bad apples. I do understand that. This doesn't make a genre bad. This doesn't make modern literature bad. This doesn't make fantasy bad, because there are a lot of solid examples that make people read these books. And I've mentioned in one of my recent videos that classic literature isn't an antipode to modern literature, and it isn't an antipode to fantasy. I really do not understand this, because classics are one thing and modern literature is another thing, and fantasy is also something else. Nothing is inherently bad. I would encourage you to push your boundaries, to explore other sides of literature, because there's more to literature than just classics. Oh, and also one more thing that did just come to my mind as I'm filming this. Well, everything else was scripted. Yeah, classic literature might be serious, but aren't philosophy books and non-fiction much more serious than classics? Well, this is a solid question. Feel free to answer in the comments. Classic literature fans tend to criticize fantasy fans because realism or whatever, but they keep forgetting that classics is a fiction too, and by such logic, philosophy books and non-fiction books and even culinary books are more important than classics because they are grounded in reality. This is really something to think about. Alright, that's all. I'm done shocking classic literature fans. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're not mad at me. See you next time. Goodbye.